It's 1966. You walk onto a dealership lot in Detroit, and there it is. A car so low, so wide, so impossibly futuristic that you stop breathing for just a second. You don't know it yet, but what you're looking at isn't just a car. It's the future. 20 years too early. The year is 1962. America is riding high. The space race is on. Rock and roll is loud. And Detroit is king of the world. At the Oldsmobile Studios in Lansing, Michigan, a young designer named David North sits down at his drafting table. He isn't designing a car for anyone in particular. He isn't following a brief. He's just dreaming. He calls it his flame red car, a compact, low-slung personal car with a profile so clean it looks like it was carved by wind. No frills, no excess, just pure, forward-thinking design. And here's the thing, it was never supposed to be built. It was just a painting, a dream on paper, something to do on a Tuesday afternoon when inspiration hits and you can't help but let your pencil run. But then the phone rang. Word came down from the executive floor at General Motors. Oldsmobile, you get to build a personal luxury car. Something in the class of the Ford Thunderbird. Something in the spirit of the Buick Riviera. And someone looked at David North's flame red painting and said, that's the one. But here's where the Oldsmobile Toronado story becomes unlike anything else in American automotive history. Because Oldsmobile didn't just want to build a beautiful car. They wanted to do something nobody in the United States had done in nearly 30 years. They wanted to drive the front wheels. Now, let me put this in perspective for you. Front-wheel drive. Today, it's everywhere. Your family sedan probably has it. Your wife's crossover, front-wheel drive. Your neighbor's economy car, front-wheel drive. It's normal. It's expected. But in 1962, in America, front-wheel drive was science fiction. The last American car to feature front-wheel drive had been the Accord 810, and that car went out of production in 1937. 25 years before Oldsmobile even started sketching the Toronado. The Accord was revolutionary but fragile, complex, expensive to build. It broke down. It was frustrating, and it killed the Accord company. So why would anyone want to try again? Because Oldsmobile engineers had been secretly working on this since 1958. 4 years of quiet, determined work, shepherded by a brilliant engineer named John Beltz, the same man who would later give us the legendary 442 muscle car package. This wasn't a gimmick to him. This was a mission. The problem with front-wheel drive in a big American car was enormous. When you drive the front wheels, those same wheels have to steer. They have to handle acceleration, braking, and turning all at the same time. The mechanical stress is brutal. And the packaging? Putting a massive V8 engine, a transmission, and front drive axles all into one tidy engine bay, that was considered close to impossible. But Oldsmobile's engineers, they found a way. They called it the Unitized Power Package, the UPP. Here's what they did. They took the turbo-hydromatic transmission, a heavy-duty 3-speed automatic, and they separated the torque converter from the planetary gear set. Then they connected them with a 2-inch wide silent chain drive called the Hi-Vo chain. This chain was made from hardened steel. It was pre-stretched at the factory on a special machine. It needed no tensioners, no idler pulleys, just pure, elegant mechanical engineering. The result? A powertrain that was essentially the same size as a conventional rear-wheel drive setup, but drove the front wheels with authority. And to prove it worked, they drove test mules over 1.5 million miles before the car ever went near a showroom. 1.5 million miles. That's like driving around the Earth 60 times. They weren't just building a car. They were building confidence. They were building proof. And when they were done, the UPP was so strong, so well-engineered that it was used basically unchanged in the GMC motorhome in the 1970s. A vehicle that needed to haul families across America with zero drama. That's how good it was. September 1965. The 1966 Oldsmobile Toronado makes its public debut. The reaction? Silence. And then absolute pandemonium. This car looked like nothing else on the American road, or anywhere in the world, 2020. Frankly. The roofline swept from the windshield all the way back in one long, unbroken fastback curve to the tail. It was 211 inches long, almost 18 feet of car. It sat low, just 52.8 inches tall, lower than a modern sports car. The front end had hidden headlights that disappeared behind clamshell covers. The sides of the car were completely clean. No rain gutters, no unnecessary chrome strips, no decoration for the sake of decoration. Just pure sculptured metal. Bill Mitchell, General Motors' legendary styling chief, reportedly walked around the car 3 times without saying a word. Then he said, "That's the best-looking car we've ever built." Step inside, and it got even more interesting. Because of the front-wheel drive layout, the Toronado had something no other car of its era could offer: a completely flat floor. No transmission tunnel. No hump running down the middle of the interior forcing the center passenger to straddle it. You could slide 3 people across the front seat, 3, without anyone being uncomfortable. In 1966, in a car that weighed 4,500 pounds, the speedometer was like nothing you'd ever seen. Oldsmobile called it a slot machine-style speedo, a stationary horizontal needle, and behind it, a rotating black drum with white numbers printed on it. As you gained speed, the numbers descended past the needle. It looked like the future. Duplicate door latch handles were placed at the rear of each door, so backseat passengers could open their own door without reaching awkwardly past the front seat. Small detail. Thoughtful detail. The kind of detail that showed this car was designed by people who actually cared. Under that long, flat hood lived the 425 cubic inch Super Rocket V8. 385 horsepower, 475 pound-feet of torque, all driving the front wheels through that revolutionary high-vo chain drive. 0 to 60, 7.5 seconds, for a car weighing over 2 tons. In 1966, that was genuinely fast. Top speed? 135 miles per hour. But here's what really set the Toronado apart from every other big American car of the era: the way it handled. With 60% of the weight over the front wheels, you'd expect it to plow like a barge through corners. And yes, there was understeer. Push it hard and it would push the nose wide. But here's the thing the automotive press couldn't stop writing about: the Toronado was poised. It was stable. It felt connected to the road in a way that big American luxury cars simply did not. It was more composed in corners than cars half its size. Motor Trend awarded it Car of the Year for 1966. Car Life gave it their award for engineering excellence. And Europe, which barely paid attention to American cars, placed it 3rd in the European Car of the Year competition. Only the second American car in history to receive that recognition. 40,963 Toronados were sold in that first year. For a completely new, radical, never-been-done car from a domestic brand, that was a triumph. 1 year after the Toronado debuted, something remarkable happened. Cadillac, the standard of the world, the pinnacle of American luxury, the brand that considered itself a cut above everyone, came to Oldsmobile and said, "We want what you have." For 1967, Cadillac adopted its own version of the Unitized Power Package for the Cadillac Eldorado. Same basic engineering principle. Same revolutionary front-wheel drive concept. Dressed in the most opulent, most extravagant body Cadillac designers could dream up. And the Eldorado became one of the most celebrated American cars of the entire decade. The Toronado had done that. A mid-level Oldsmobile had created the technology that Cadillac used to build one of its greatest icons. For 1967, the Toronado received a mild facelift and optional front disc brakes, fixing what many had considered its only real weakness. But sales dropped sharply, almost by half. The shock of the new had worn off. Americans were still cautious about that unusual front-wheel drive setup. For 1968, the engine grew to 455 cubic inches, 7.5 liters. Torque jumped to 510 pound-feet. And a special option code, the W34, brought cold air induction, a performance camshaft, and a specially calibrated transmission. 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds. Quarter mile in 15.7. This wasn't just a luxury car anymore. It was a luxury car that could embarrass a lot of muscle cars at the stoplight and then pull up to a country club and nobody would look twice. Firestone even designed a special tire specifically for the Toronado, called the TFD, the Toronado Front Drive Tire. Stiffer sidewalls, a unique tread pattern, a stylishly thin white pinstripe, a tire made for exactly one car in the world. When was the last time a tire manufacturer designed a tire exclusively for your vehicle? 1971. The world was changing, and so was the Toronado. GM had decided the era of the sporting personal luxury car was over. Buyers wanted something more comfortable, more traditional, more Cadillac-like. And so the Toronado was redesigned. Completely. The second-generation Toronado was bigger in every direction. The wheelbase stretched from 119 to 122 inches. The length grew to nearly 220 inches. The torsion bar front suspension stayed, but the multi-leaf rear springs were replaced by coils for a softer, more boulevard-friendly ride. Front disc brakes became standard. And the engine, still the 455, was now tuned for smoothness rather than performance. Its compression ratio dropped to meet new emissions regulations. Sales exploded. The buying public, it turned out, preferred the Toronado as a traditional luxury car rather than a sports-flavored grand tourer. By 1971, it was finally outselling the 1966 original. And it would continue to sell well throughout the decade. But something important was happening inside these Toronados that most people completely missed at the time. From 1974 through 1976, the Toronado became part of General Motors' first experimental production run of driver and passenger side airbags, the air cushion restraint system. Airbags. In 1974, when airbags wouldn't become federally mandated in new cars until 1998. 24 years later, these Toronados had a special steering wheel, a knee blocker under the dashboard, and a bag that would deploy in a fraction of a second to save your life in a crash. And what else did this generation pioneer? High-mounted brake lights. Those little lights mounted above the trunk lid, below the rear window. The Toronado had them in 1971. They became federally required on all American cars in 1986. 15 years later. This is what I mean when I say ahead of its time. The 1966 Toronado brought front-wheel drive to America 20 years before it became the dominant layout. It pioneered airbags 24 years before they were mandated. It had high-mounted brake lights 15 years before they were required. It had available rear-wheel anti-lock braking. A fuel economy gauge in 1974 to tell you if you were driving too aggressively. This car was relentlessly ahead of its time. Over and over and over again. By the late 1970s, the world had changed irrevocably. The oil embargo of 1973 had scared America into thinking small. The government was imposing fuel economy standards. The massive, boat-like luxury cars of the early decades suddenly looked irresponsible, embarrassing, like dinosaurs at a dinner party. And so for 1979, the Toronado was cut down. Nearly 1,000 pounds lighter, 16 inches shorter. The wheelbase shrank from 122 to 114 inches. In when a more modest Oldsmobile 350 cubic inch V8, still a capable engine, but nothing like the thunderous 455 that had come before. Rated at 170 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 9.5 seconds. And then Oldsmobile made a decision that would haunt them for years. They offered a diesel V8 option. Based on the gasoline 350 engine, it was adapted, hurriedly many felt, for diesel fuel. The appeal was obvious. Diesel fuel was cheaper. Diesel engines got better mileage. In the age of the gas crisis, this was exactly what American buyers were looking for. And for a while it sold. People believed in it. And then the engine started failing. Head bolt stripped. Engines blew. The story spread. Dealers were overwhelmed with warranty claims. Owners were furious. Some of the most devoted Oldsmobile customers felt genuinely betrayed. The Oldsmobile diesel became one of the most infamous engines in American automotive history. It didn't just hurt the Toronado. It damaged Oldsmobile's reputation for a decade. Some historians argue it was the beginning of the end for the entire brand. But even through the darkness, the Toronado still offered genuine quality. Independent rear suspension, designed by Cadillac engineers, gave it handling that surpassed every previous generation. The ride quality was exceptional. The interior was still beautifully trimmed. And in the XSC trim of 1980 and 81, you could have bucket seats, digital instruments, and even suede leather inserts. This was still a special car. For 1986, the Toronado entered its fourth and final generation. And one more time, against all the odds, it did something remarkable. It became a technology showcase for the entire industry. The new Toronado was smaller still, unibody construction, a transversely mounted Buick 3.8-liter V6 instead of the old longitudinal V8. Hidden headlights returned for the first time since 1969. The styling was clean, modern, and competitive with European personal luxury cars. In 1987, Oldsmobile introduced the Toronado Trofeo, and with it came something so advanced that it wouldn't become commonplace in cars for another 20 years. A touchscreen. Not a novelty, not a gimmick. A genuine, functional, dash-mounted touchscreen CRT display that controlled the heating and air conditioning, the radio, the trip computer, and brace yourself, an integrated hands-free cellular telephone. Hands-free calling. In a car. In 1989, Bluetooth hands-free calling wouldn't become a widely available automotive feature until the mid-2000s. The Trofeo had it 15 years earlier. And then, the final, incredible chapter in the Toronado story. In 1992, the last year of production, General Motors and Avis Rent-A-Car ran a pilot test of GPS navigation in select Toronado Trofeo models rented at Orlando International Airport. GPS navigation. In a car. In 1992, the system was called TravTech. It included a computer-synthesized voice guidance system. It was monitored by AAA via an antenna on the car's trunk. It gave you turn-by-turn directions to locations around Orlando. TomTom wouldn't launch their first GPS device until 2004. Garmin's automotive GPS came in the mid-2000s. Apple Maps launched in 2012. The Toronado had GPS navigation 20 years before it was mainstream. Again, on May 28, 1992, the last Oldsmobile Toronado rolled off the assembly line at the Detroit Hamtramck plant. After 26 years, 4 generations, hundreds of thousands of cars built, it was over. Look around you right now. If you're in America, statistically speaking, more than half the cars on the road around you are front-wheel drive. The family sedan, the minivan, the crossover, the compact. Front-wheel drive is everywhere. That is the Toronado's world. We live in the world the Toronado helped create. Before 1966, American engineers genuinely weren't sure that front-wheel drive could work in a large, high-performance car. The Cord experience had left scars. The conventional wisdom was that rear-wheel drive was simply better, more reliable, more manageable, more buildable at scale. The Toronado proved that wrong. Decisively, publicly, and beautifully. It drove 1.5 million test miles before launch to make sure it would never let its owners down. And it didn't. The Unitized Power Package was so reliable that a recreational vehicle manufacturer trusted it to carry families across the American highway system without a second thought. But the engineering story is almost secondary to the cultural one. In 1966, when Americans were still buying cars with big tail fins and chrome excess, Oldsmobile had the courage to bring something genuinely new to market. Something that looked unlike anything that had come before. Something that was clean when everything else was ornate. Modern when everything else was traditional. David North's Flame Red Sketch became a $60 million production program and one of the most significant automobiles ever built in the United States. Motor Trend called it Car of the Year. Europe took notice. And 40,000 Americans walked into showrooms and said, "Yes, I trust this. I believe in this. Give me the keys." That takes courage on the part of the engineers, the designers, the executives who signed the checks, and on the part of the customers who bought something they'd never seen before. Today, clean, original Toronados, especially the first-generation cars from 1966 to 1970, are among the most prized and admired collector vehicles in America. They show up at Pebble Beach. They win Concours Awards. They turn heads at every car show they attend. Because people know. When you see a 1966 Toronado in person, really see it, walk around it, open the door, and slide into that flat floor interior, you understand instantly what David North was trying to say back in 1962. He was saying, the future looks like this. He was right. There's something beautiful and a little melancholy about a car that was too far ahead of its time. The Oldsmobile Toronado didn't get the credit it deserved when it was new. It was too unusual, too different, too much of a leap for most American buyers who just wanted something familiar. And yet everything it pioneered eventually became the standard. Front-wheel drive, airbags, high-mounted brake lights, touchscreens, GPS navigation, hands-free calling. If you drove every single one of those technologies to their logical conclusion, if you drew a straight line from every innovation the Toronado introduced to the cars we drive today, you'd have something that looks a lot like every modern car. The Toronado didn't just predict the future. It built it. One car, 26 years, 4 generations, and a legacy that drives past you every single day without you even knowing it. That is the Oldsmobile Toronado. And if you ask me, it's still the most important car most Americans have never heard of.